Well, folks, we made it to season 7. Welcome to the Vulnerability Time podcast. I am your host, Josias Abriel, and published author. Speaking of published author, before the episode starts, make sure to go check out my books. They're available on Amazon, and the link is in the episode description below. Go ahead, get you some healing. One's a poetry book about overcoming pain and trauma and stuff like that, and then the other one's a self-awareness interactive journal notebook. So get you some healing. You're worth it. Another thing that you're worth all the love in the world. You're worth all the healing in the world, and I'm glad that you're here with us today to heal together. You are loved, you are valuable. This is your sign. Alrighty, enjoy the episode. Bye, folks. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Vulnerability Time. I am your host and published author, Josias Abriel. With us today, we have Dale. Dale, welcome to the Vulnerability Time podcast.
Thank you very much, Josias. I'm happy to be here. Hope I can be as vulnerable as possible.
Yes, yay. So, Dale, before we get into our topics, which will be mental health stigma, discussing schizophrenia and anosognosia,
Agnosognosia.
agnosognosia, and then recovery. But before we get into that, folks, Dale, tell us a little bit about you, Dale.
Actually, Josias, when people ask me to do this, I usually start with a poem. It's called Dale. Well, I'm a poet. I have an archive of 5,000 poems that I've developed since 1985 when I graduated from college.
Yeah.
Before that, I wrote 6 novels, but at graduation, I turned to poetry, and now I have like 5,000 poems, and including 5 collections on Amazon under the name D.E. Wolf. But
Yes.
so basically, I just start things off with a poem, and it's called Dale Reviewing What Actually Happened. And it goes like this. Hi, I'm God was the joke I made after Killer Dartmouth toke of some primo Ivy League smoke, which apparently caused me to croak because in mental hospital I awoke with Roomy Gabriel, the main bloke, who did my delusions angelically stroke, even while the doctor claimed my brain broke the moment divine gag I spoke, testifying I was only big quack, which clinicians diagnosed as psychotic attack, preventing me from getting sanity back until I came to Teaneck Hackensack to pursue resident therapy program track and deal with my evident lack of reason among psychiatric patient pack who never gave me any slack. Under interrogation, the story didn't crack.
Mm.
So that's basically what happened. I was academically successful freshman at Dartmouth College in 1975, and in the summer of 75, I should say, while I was at Dartmouth, I was like heavily consuming drugs. I was smoking high-powered marijuana every day, and then I would also do LSD, mescaline, mushrooms, the whole gamut. And anything except cocaine. I only got into cocaine at the very end, and that was a big mistake. So I
Mm.
never got into cocaine very deeply. But anyway, so I came up with what I thought was a great joke, which was, "Hi, I'm God," because how could God be 5'8"? That was like the punchline. So I was like walking around campus for 3 days telling everybody my joke, and then the campus cops came and said, "Are you Dale?" And they said yes, and I said yes, and they said, "Would you come with us?" So I thought they were going to take me to meet the president of the university, but instead they took me to the infirmary where I was interrogated, and 3 days later I was in a mental hospital for 13 weeks in New York City. And this led to a 5-year stay in a psychiatric program in New Jersey, from which I graduated. I got my own apartment. I've been in my own unsupervised, my own unsupervised own apartment for 44 years since 1981, and went back to college at Fairleigh Dickinson University, graduated magna cum laude in English, all the time pursuing my poetry, and I was also working at the college bookstore for money and stuff. And then I went on disability, and I became an entrepreneur helping Fairleigh Dickinson students write papers. And so I did that for like 5 years. And then I had like some off years. And then about 4 years ago, I joined World Financial Group, which is the marketing wing of Transamerica Insurance. So I was I that was like my only exposure to like corporate culture, and it was very good corporate culture, but it was a corporate culture. And now I mentor the family caregivers of those with schizophrenia.
Nice, nice. Okay, thank you for sharing, Dale. Dale, I'll be asking. You said you have some work out on Amazon, so before I release the episode, which I'll probably release your episode t- tomorrow.
Okay.
Um, I'll be asking you to send me any links so I can put in the episode description below. So, folks, you can check out Dale's work in the episode description below. Alrighty. Okay, so Dale, um, well, let's talk about mental health stigma.
Okay, well, this is one of the reasons I've like come out on so many podcasts, and I speak out so freely because I've been dealing with schizophrenia for 50 years, since basically I was first hospitalized August 3rd, 1975. So August 3rd, which is in about 2 weeks, will be the 50th anniversary of my first hospitalization. So um, I've been diagnosed and dealing with schizophrenia for 50 years, and one of my missions I feel from God is to speak for those who can't speak for themselves.
Mm,
And there's so many people with severe mental illness that basically there's mental illness, Josiah, and then there's severe or serious mental illness. And that basically involves bipolar, schizoaffective, and schizophrenia. So serious mental illness, SMI, is
mm,
like basically a whole different ball game than like norm than the traditional ideas of like mindfulness and depression and anxiety, PTSD. I'm not saying those aren't serious and
right,
they have
right.
to be dealt with, but there's a fundamental restructuring of the brain
Mm-hmm.
that takes place in severe mental illness. It doesn't take place in other types of mental illness. So, I feel very fortunate that I'm as well spoken and as well recovered as I am. But the fact is that you know the the perception of mental illness in this country, I meant not. Well, there are 2 points. First off, mental illness has reached epidemic proportions, and
Yeah.
not only this nation but in the world,
Uh-huh.
especially since COVID. COVID kicked everybody off the trail of normal, and
Mm-hmm.
so there's a epidemic, and then the other thing is that because of the epidemic, and so many people are now seeking mental health counseling and help, there's a vast shortage of professionals. And I find this in my own work, mentoring families of schizophrenics, is that there just aren't any doctors or therapists or professionals who actually have worked with schizophrenics enough to be able to really able to help them.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the perception of mental illness, of course, in the media is absolutely atrocious. I mean,
Yeah.
anybody does anything wrong, the first cause is always mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I'm talking about, the stigma. And there's not only the public stigma of the stigma of public perception of mental illness. I mean, like when since this is vulnerability time, what do you think of when you think of a schizophrenic? What's your first image that comes to your brain when I say word schizophrenic?
Uh, Someone, I don't know. I don't really have
Right. Well,
yeah.
that's better than having a negative opinion or anything.
Hmm.
But just to clarify things, a definition of schizophrenia that people can understand, because when you talk to professionals, they talk about delusions and hallucinations and disorganized thinking, and nobody knows what that means. But my definition of schizophrenia is a schizophrenic is someone who's living in a reality that was not conceived on earth. I mean, that's basically, to me, after 50 years as a schizophrenic, that's basically what it filters down to. I feel I've been living in another world for 50 years, and adjacent to my definition of schizophrenic is a genius, and a genius is a schizophrenic who has integrated his world into that as a social matrix in which he exists.
Hmm.
So, basically, I feel I'm a genius at this point. But we won't go into my own self glorification. But the stigma is what. Getting back to the stigma, it took me 35 years to overcome the self stigma I had because of my diagnosis. When I was first in the hospital, I'd say to my doctor, I said to my doctor, "Why am I here? There's nothing wrong with me," which is classic Anasognosia, which we'll get to. But he said, "Well, if you broke your leg, Dale, you come to the hospital, right?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, you broke your brain." And not only did all the guilt from all my drug use like come flooding back, but it also just like put me, and this was the state of psychiatry in 1975 when I was taken away, is there's no help for schizophrenia. All you can hope for if you got the diagnosis is live in a group home for the rest of your life and take your medication and maybe work a minimum wage job. And that to me, that's basically what the doctor meant when he said, you broke your brain. And of course, the neuroscience, science, and everything, and brain research and everything says there's no such thing as a broken brain. You're just living in a separate reality from what's accepted as normal. So, um, the self stigma is usually the hardest thing to overcome. That's the
Mm.
point I'm getting to. It took me 35 years to get over that one statement by my first doctor that your brain is broken.
Hmm. Wow, wow. And Dale, tell us more about um for me and for just others to um better like understand, like the schizophrenia. Can you tell us about I'm not going to pronounce it right, but
Agnosognosia.
anosognosia. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So agnosognosia is a term taken from neurology,
Hmm.
and it's used for stroke victims who can't understand that there's something wrong with their brain.
Hmm.
Because obviously stroke affects your brain. Stroke victims who can't understand that their brain is affected and there's something wrong with their brain, or suffer from anosognosia. So the term has been transferred to psychiatry, meaning for mental illness, a person is unable to comprehend that there's something wrong with it, that they have a mental illness. So there's an excellent book about this. It's called "I'm Not Sick and I Don't Need Help" by this Doctor Xavier Amador. He was a PhD. He is a PhD in psychology, and his brother was schizophrenic. So this is like lessons he learned over 17 years of dealing with his schizophrenic uh, brother who was in agnosognosia and therefore didn't want to take medication, didn't want therapy because the analogy I use, Josias, is if you hold a book up to a blind person and you ask him to read the book, he's not going to be able to do it. And it's the same thing with mental illness and agnosognosia. A person just can't see that. And this is something actually that I experienced firsthand. With my I'm God, and um, just sort of let me add as a there are all sorts of symptoms of schizophrenia, from delusions, hallucinations, disorganized thinking, and everything. And everybody thinks that schizophrenics are all like just these hallucinating madmen who see things and hear things from demons and everything. And to tell you the truth, I've never hallucinated in my life, even under the influence of 50 trips of LSD. I've never hallucinated. So, I every case of schizophrenia is different, and that's something else that's important to bear in mind. But getting back to agnosognosia, so agnosognosia is now an official symptom of severe mental illness, and that means that at least 60 to 70% of people with severe mental illness don't realize they need help. And obviously, this is a big block in recovery. And, I feel that the essence of recovery is self awareness. So, as I was saying, I was in agnosognosia for 10 years until I had a vision after being in therapy 3 times a week and group therapy twice a week for 5 years. I would basically forced into therapy by this program, and thank God I was. But ultimately, I maintained my God delusion for the first 10 years of my illness, of my condition. And then one morning, I was like, I just had this vision of the world being incinerated in a thermonuclear holocaust.
Yeah.
And so basically, I called that the death of Dale. And what I meant by that was that everything that was Dale died except the body. And with it died my delusions, died with it died, but but then it didn't, the delusion didn't die, it just went to a higher level,
Mhm.
which is I'm not God, I'm Dewey Duck. So basically, for the last 40 years, I've been Dewey since that moment in 1984 when I had that vision. Basically, since the death of Dale 40 years ago, I've been Dewey, living in Hackensack. But then a basic miracle has happened in the last 2 months. And first off, I feel that I finally, if you can okay, like people say that schizophrenia is multiple personalities. I'm not going to go into that contrast right now, but let's say schizophrenia is multiple personalities. And basically, what has happened to me in the last month is that if you can conceive of personalities as like ball bearings or tumblers in a safe, and I basically have turned the safe and the tumblers to Dale and Hackensack after 40 years have fallen into place, and I've been able to open the safe of Dale and Hackensack. So basically that means that the last 40 years of of delusion and everything have also died. And I had a insight that I popped the water balloon of my 50-year delusion of being God, and it's cleansed me so that my soul is now purely Dale. And that's so that's the long story short about agnosognosia. Is that even when I was at the height of therapy, uh, I I saw nothing wrong with saying I was God. And when I had that vision of the death of Dale, that's where the death of that's where the vision of Dale as God died. But now I've made the separation between Dale and God completely, so that God is the entity to whom I can like turn as Dale when I need help, rather than having to rely on myself.
Gotcha, gotcha. And earlier you mentioned a little bit about recovery. Can you speak to us about recovery and like your recovery journey?
Sure. Well, that what I just said has a lot to do with it, but basically, it's
Mhm.
been an evolution of of a higher thought. I, I don't know if you know Sid Banks. Sid Banks is this he was a Scottish welder in Vancouver, I think, and he just had a vision of basically he had like a series of visions, and so he came up with a thing called three principles. And Sid Bank, and the three principles are thought, mind, thought, and consciousness. That like is the tri trilogy that defines human inner reaction. But that's just some background. But Sid Banks says that every person has the potential to change their life with one thought if they can find that thought. And with me, the thought was, "Hi, I'm God." And basically, I pursued that. I pursued that track and that thought for as long as I could, for as long as it could be valid. And now I'm finally at the point where I've gotten beyond the delusion, and I'm back to my true self, who hasn't been back to the true Dale, the Dale I should have been, had I not been taken away from Dartmouth 50 years ago.
Mm.
So basically, now I have 50 years of being God, but now I'm back to the Dale I was before I got taken away. And I've always said, Josias, nobody knew I knew what Dale was up to 20 years before anybody else did.
Yes. For Thank you for sharing that, Dale. For eh, I know that's, you know, humans, we can be scared of what we don't understand. We can be scared of what we don't know. And so, and I also feel like society has, painted a very, like you said,
You can say
stigmatized,
negative,
very negative, view, a very misunderstood view of schizophrenia.
right?
Dale, for those of us who, have been conditioned with that view, um, what is something that you can tell us? Like, give us some, I don't know how to, give me one second, let me verbalize this. Um, Give us, help us to,
I
lessen.
think I think I know where you're going, and I think I
Yeah.
can. So basically, this is sort of like a half joking answer, but it's also like half serious. Is a Dale to Dale existence instead of day to day, go Dale to Dale. I say a day is a 24-hour orbit around the sun by the Earth, and everybody knows what a day is, and everybody has the same thing. But if you go Dale to Dale, then that means that I meant the more exposed I become, the more you can be at ease with what with my message and everything. So therefore, my goal, I say two or three things. First off, I say take things one day. The secret to success is taking things one day at a time. And then secondly, I say if my best friend from Dartmouth was a philosophy major, and his favorite philosopher was Nietzsche, and he summarized Nietzsche's philosophy as make all your summits valleys. But if you take the Scottish meaning of dale, which is valley, then you can turn that into make all your summits dales. So that's the second thing. And the third thing is this is one I just came up recently after a lot of Bible study, but I am the Dale between the Alpha and the Omega, and basically I live in an eternal presence. So I'm and this is something that I've dealt with a lot in my recovery. Is am I going to go to hell? Have I condemned myself eternally for my joke I'm God, which is the son of Satan? So therefore, basically in the last, I've just like I had like a lot of very insightful and deep thoughts in the last 3 months, Josias. But you know what what I'm thinking is I consider myself the five in one. There's Dale, Dewey, Duck, and Genius. Those are my five basic personalities. So basically, I feel that we've come to a time where the three in one, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, is going to be replaced by the five in one, which is me. And I don't say this egotistically or anything. I'm just saying this is how I see the evolution of everything progressing. I don't mean to be say I'm almighty, I'm the creator or anything, but I came up with a equation which I think might help explain it. It goes Jesus equals God squared equals Dale cubed. So I'm in a mathematical relationship with God that can't be denied. But the good thing about Dale cubed equals Dale cubed is everybody can be Dale, and that's the whole point. I basically, my journey is that of every man. It's a hero's journey that basically is the source of all movies and books and everything. And I'm a living hero's journey from the pits of psychosis to the joy of I won't say enlightenment, but the joy of of knowing myself. So um, that's basically it. So live a Dale to Dale existence, one Dale at a time, and know you're living in the Dale between the Alpha and the Omega.
Alrighty, well, thank you so much, Dale, for sharing with us. Folks, remember you can check out Dale's work in the episode description below. Dale, go ahead and send me your work when you get a chance. Send it by tomorrow because I'm gonna release your episode tomorrow.
Okay, I got your email.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Even better. Even better. Um, well, with that being said, thank you so much, Dale, for coming on the Vulnerability Time.
And this is one thing I need to say in parting, Josiah.
Yes, please, please.
A lot of people think that I'm totally delusional, totally crazy, and everything. And what I figured out was just like 3 days ago is I'm going to stop arguing about who I am not, and I'm going to start speaking about who I am. And
Mm,
so, therefore, if you think I'm grandiose or delusional or crazy or something, that's perfectly you're right, and I accept it. But on the other hand, I have 50 years of deep therapy to back me up that I at least am sane, if not who I say I am.
yeah. It's beautiful, Dale. And another thing that I noticed is, often something that I've noticed in my life is that oftentimes, and I've been guilty of this in the past, is that when oftentimes we call what we don't understand crazy. And so I learned that, understanding and love, like gaining understanding, is it is in my life, it has been such a powerful just tool. Such a powerful skill is gaining understanding. Um,
Right.
yeah. So thank you for sharing that, Dale. I'm sure that, um,
And one last note,
yeah,
just the name of your show, and
yeah,
why I'm happy to be here is that vulnerability equals authenticity, and people are saying more and more authenticity is the most necessary attribute that a person can have. And
mhm,
I don't mean to brag on myself, but I just feel, I mean, even when I was in 15 hospitalizations, I feel I've always been my authentic self. And,
yeah,
I couldn't have done that without God and Jesus and everything. But, I just thank God that I've gotten as far as I have.
yeah,
And that, I can be authentic. And I think that the more authentic and the more people hear me and hear similar things to what I have to say, the more they're going to be able to understand, the people with mental illness have a illness as a but as, people don't judge people for having cancer or diabetes, but mental illness they do.
right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I agree. Dale, before we leave, I did want to mention, um, I did want to bring up because I think it's very important. Um, so in our pre-meeting, you had mentioned the life expectancy of those with schizophrenia.
Yeah, well, it's at least 10 years shorter than everybody else. And actually, 10% of schizophrenics commit suicide. Um, I think the average life expectancy is like 10 years below the normal. And uh, the other thing is that, it just, a lot of them are just like lost. I mean that's a broken system. People just die, or what, for whatever reason. It's not indirectly caused by mental illness, but there are a lot of things that people die of that are affected by mental illness that aren't directly the cause of mental or caused by mental illness. And I think that's important to bear in mind. And but the mortality, I've lost. I mean, I just feel very fortunate. I've survived 50 years with a diagnosis. That's God. That's not me. But so, but mortality, and one last thing is schizophrenia costs the nation $220 billion a year in lost wages and hospital costs and everything. So it's in the economic interest of the nation to deal with this rather than just on a personal level.
Right, right. I did not know that that is, wow. Yeah. Well, this is why things like this is why I just am a fan for stigmas just breaking. Stigmas breaking. Just there's so much limitation when there's stigmas. There's so much lack of growth when there's stigmas, lack of understanding, lack of progress when there's stigmas, you know, um and like you said, wow, I mean, wow, that's just, I'm gonna have to sit and think, like, just let that marinate. Thank you for sharing that, Dale.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Mm.
If we've changed the mind of one person, we've succeeded, right, Josiah?
Yes, exactly, exactly. Well, thank you so much, Dale, for being here. Thank you for still being alive. Thank you for, sharing yourself with the world. Um, you know, one taking it one Dale at a time, right? Dale?
Correct. Go deal to deal.
Yeah. Um,
And if you need a deal, you can always find me on Instagram. I'll
yes.
send you that information too. So
Yeah.
I'm always doing reels and live. I do a live on Instagram every Saturday night and 11 Eastern if people want to tune in. And but I'm always on Instagram, and actually I might be starting a podcast very soon too. It's in the works. So
If you need help with like that process, just reach out to me. Also, Dale, I just made an Instagram 3 days ago. So send me that information. I will be following you. I will be tuning into your lives on Saturday.
great.
Okay. Oh God, I'm excited. Okay. Alrighty, folks. Well, this has been another episode of Vulnerability Time. Stay tuned for next episode for whatever that will be. I am your host and published author. Remember to check out Dale's work in the episode description below. And I will see y'all or something like that next time. Bye, folks.